My name is Michaela.
And where are you currently located?
I work in Western Massachusetts and I live in Southern Vermont, originally from New York, and I met in New York.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you first met? First impressions, where you first met?
We first met in 2008 at the open house for the high school we both ended up attending. I met him through a mutual friend at the time.
How old were the two of you at that time when you first
We
met?
were 13 going on 14. I remember that night I shook his hand and we didn't really talk then. But then the second or third time I met him, I was like, wow, this person has a lot of energy. I met, I like talking to you. I just can't keep up with you. And he understood. And I think that trend continued throughout what became very good friendship that, lasted until he died.
Can you tell me the name of your high school?
The Heschel School or Heschel.
It was a pluralistic Jewish high school.
Yeah, it's complicated because Heschel was very progressive in many ways. And part of me doesn't really feel like I can fully speak to this because there are other people who might have different experiences. While they were progressive, they still had a lot of progress to make. I think Ahmet was accepted in a way that he wouldn't have been accepted elsewhere and before his time, but there wasn't that kind of culture and understanding that we have today. And it's, happened with time. But he ultimately was accepted there in a way that he wouldn't have been, to be frank, at an Orthodox school, most likely.
What was the environment or like culture like there in terms of pluralism? Jewish kids coming from like different kinds of Jewish experience.
We were pretty diverse in terms of experiences. We had kids who grew up Orthodox and then kids who grew up pretty much secular, and put them all in the same building in the same grade. One thing about Heschel is it was diverse religiously. I can speak to some things like that, and it was diverse in that way. We were on the person, the day, the class. I mean, the one thing that united us all was the fact that we were all Jewish. In trying times like these, you see how valuable that is. Seen anything quite like it to date. I have this, and you were in the room at the time, very powerful video of, it wasn't quite Havdalah yet. It was like Sudasli Sheet time when we were singing together around Emmet's bed. He was resting. It didn't matter in that moment what our backgrounds were. It was just everybody was either singing or sitting still and listening and being present. I had one person record the moment because I wanted to savor it because I knew that he wasn't going to be around. So everybody was pretty present, and that was really what united us and formed this common space, like you said, common Jewish space.
Hamalach hagoel oti, Hamalach hagoel oti mikora, Yevarech et hane'arim, Yikarev bahem sheni, B'shem avotai, Avraham ve'Yitzchak, ve'igdu larav, ve'kerev haaretz. as my voice can go.
The disabled community isn't that big. The Jewish community certainly isn't that big. So when you put them together, it's not a very big population. And all of us, or at least most of us, were connected in that way. And one of the things with Ahmet, I was just able to be who I was. I have a hearing loss and I don't always like talking about it, or constantly having to be like, I miss that, I miss that, I miss that. But with Ahmet, I didn't feel that sense of embarrassment. And I was just always open with him about what my disability was. And I have a learning disability and arguably autism. And I didn't have to hide that. And Ahmet created that kind of energy for a lot of people. And it continued well after he passed away. He's still my friend when it comes down to. Some days I'm like, I have this really funny dark meme that he would appreciate. And then I'm like, shit, he's not around. And some days I still have to take a minute. It's hard thinking that it's been 5 years. The world has changed so much. And one thing that's remained a constant is that he's not in it. It's still not easy for me to, talk about. I don't often get to a lot of spaces where I can't talk about it because pretty much all day long I'm dealing with other people's problems, which is my job and what I signed up for. But I don't often get spaces where I get to process the grief and acknowledge that I never really stopped grieving.
What kinds of lessons can we learn from our grief?
That just because someone's not physically here doesn't mean that their legacy is gone. One of the things that I've said past couple of years is Ahmet knew loss better than really anyone I knew. And I mean, the guy could not catch a fucking break. And the irony of it all, the most painful irony I've ever felt is just wanting to talk to him about how much I ache to have him here. And Ahmet knew grief better than anyone I've ever met. So just the irony of my wanting to talk to my deceased friend about how well he knew loss. I have a poster hanging on my wall from a protest I went to last year. It was at the Capitol in Montpelier in Vermont. Queer kids from all over the state came on Trans Day of Visibility, and it was so fucking beautiful. I couldn't stop crying the whole time. I just saw so many younger people than myself advocating for the same things he did. I said the day before we had a meeting about it, and I said to a bunch of people on the call, one of whom was my superintendent at the time, I said, I hope we can all continue Emmet's work. Oh, it just feels like that happens with old age, not when you're 24. Life and legacies go on, even when we're not there to see it. I remember in the article you wrote that he was living his father's unrequited queer life. I know his father was a deeply complicated person. Part of why Stu and Naomi took him in with open arms. I'm smiling because I've been fidgeting the whole time and I have my hand in a cup. And I'm like the kind of person I could just come right out and say shit like that. And he'd be like, you do you. And every day I think about, literally every day, there's not a day that goes by where I don't think about it. How unfair it is. Emmet should have been 30 this August, and he didn't even get to turn 25. Sorry, I'm just taking my afternoon meds. And
I want you to do that.
I remember once Emmet and I were at Starbucks, and he devoured a Frappuccino. and he had the empty cup. He's like, give me a second. And then he puked in it. I was like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm fine. Dude, you just, he was himself. It was in sort of the earlier stages of the illness. This was back before, way before hospice, possibly back before Ehlers-Danlos. So they were still trying to figure out what was going on. And it was the first time I had seen it. So we had one too. It's the Riverdale Starbucks. We always met there. Okay to be angry. It's okay to say this isn't fair, and it doesn't have to be poetic. It doesn't have to sound great. It just sort of is what it is. And in the end of the day, I can't change the outcome. I can change other things in my life. All connected and leaned on each other for support, and we still do to this day, just maintaining those connections through social media, through, whenever we're able to see each other in person, clinging on to those connections in a lot of ways for dear life. Just laughing, thinking about Emmet's sister, I think it was on New Year's Eve, posted videos of a rave that they had in the hospice room. The ones that I can talk about. No, I'm just kidding. We would just sit around and talk. I remember Emmet had like freshly ordered boxes of Diva Curl, which is like expensive ass shit. We would do his nails and just like very, very femme stuff. And just like there was glitter everywhere and rainbows. And it did not look like a hospice room. It was full of life. It felt like a dorm room. That is what it felt like. For one time, he was like on a plane somewhere and he would be missing class. He's like, can I just Skype in? I'm like, dude, just miss the class. Like, but no, that was just who he was. He wanted to show up and be present. It was just who he was. When came out as trans, we were 16 years old. I didn't understand it at the time. But, being completely cisgender woman, of course I wasn't educated and I was a teenager, but as time went on, I realized that this is who he is. He was just a pioneer in every way when he shouldn't have had to be, that he existed as a queer person back when we didn't talk about these things. Now it's much more known about, at least. He was just like, fuck gender, man. If I want to wear makeup, I'm going to fucking wear makeup. If I want to go on hormones and have top surgery, I'm going to get that fucking surgery because I am who I am. And wearing makeup doesn't make me less masculine or trans. Just makes me me. Because Matt used to be super masculine. I'm only going to wear boy clothes, so to speak. And then when we got older, he was like, I'm going to wear heels and a dress. And it's like when we were younger, he was very much like not wanting that. But instead of my being like, oh, that's weird, it made me think, oh, this is complicated. By acknowledging that these barriers do exist and that even when things are expensive and often inaccessible, that it doesn't mean that we don't get to show up for people. It means acknowledging, ASL interpreters are pretty expensive. At least just saying that instead of, oh, we're going to have this event and my deaf mother can't go because she won't get anything out of it. I just wish more places would acknowledge that barriers do exist and they are beyond a lot of people's controls. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do something about it. And at Emmet's funeral, we had pronoun stickers at first because I'm cisgender. I didn't really feel the need to have a pronoun sticker at the time. And I was also in a grieving space. So I was like, oh, thank you. I didn't really process what was going on. And then I was like, I should have one. I think the world can learn a lot from just some of the accommodations that we had, where we have pronoun stickers just because we should make that the norm. We should have sign language interpreters be more common so that my mom can go to more events, things like that. Well, that we're going to be rabbis or already rabbis. It, in a way, shifted a narrative about what religion is, what it means to be a religious Jew, and that there were all kinds of religious Jews showing up in that space. It just is a reflection on how I don't want to say obligated to show up for people, but it just feels like the bare minimum to show up for somebody who has mobility issues or any other kind of disability. Is just to take steps to ensure they can be present, that we don't do enough. And I think that was just a lesson to be learned.